if you're a small company, I think you can use tools to really hone your content strategy. So if you're going hard after remote, well, so are, 10 million other companies. So what is a niche within remote that you can like hone in on that fits with your audience? So you can kind of like find little niche-y areas like.
What's up, everyone? I'm Chris Ronzio, founder and CEO of Trainual, and this is Process Makes Perfect. As always, we're talking with experts in process creation, automation, and delegation. Basically, the people that know how to make business easier. You just heard Joe Martin, and this episode is all about the process of designing a great customer experience. Joe is currently the GM and the VP of marketing at CloudApp, a visual collaboration tool, and he has more than 13 years of experience in marketing within the tech industry. Prior to his role at CloudApp, Joe was the head of social analytics at Adobe, where he led their paid social strategy and a research team that provided strategic guidance to organizations within the company. He's been published in the Associated Press, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and a lot of other top outlets. What I really liked about this episode is he talks about, as a remote first tool, how they're approaching this new remote economy that we live in. So he talks about the boom in traffic they've seen, the signups, and how they've adjusted things to be more applicable than ever. He also talks about customer experience because their tool relates to designing great customer experiences, and they've done a fabulous job of collecting customer and non-customer feedback in designing their product. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this. Take a listen.
Can this business thrive without the owner?
You got to start putting systems and processes in place. If you don't use the systems, the business will break.
We're always looking to buy back our time.
You cannot say something once and expect that it actually is received.
This is the way we work.
A big motivation in that for me is creating a job for myself that I really enjoy.
This is how you discover your vision.
And this is Process Makes Perfect. Hey everyone, welcome to Process Makes Perfect. I'm your host, Chris Ronzio, and as you heard in the intro, today we're talking with Joe Martin. Joe, thanks for being here.
Hey, excited to be here. Thanks, Chris.
So Joe, as you know from the intro, is currently at CloudApp. Before at CloudApp, he was at Adobe. So Joe, what did you do there? What do you do here?
Yeah, Adobe was a long journey. I was there for over 7 years and did a lot of different things. Kind of started out doing data science and analytics work. Did a lot of things that were published in large press. The idea was to have Forrester style reports that Adobe led, and those would get published for data trends. Then I did a lot of content work and kind of ended out my stint there doing social analytics. So Adobe got 12 to 20 million mentions of its brand every year. And so my team would analyze that and lead that for like strategy and content and other teams.
So I'm curious if I could interject for a second. There's this entrepreneurship center here in Arizona that I've toured, and they have this kind of big data machine learning listening tool that it sounds like it does similar to what you were doing. And is that what it was? Were you listening for mentions and trying to interact with customers, or what was it mainly about?
Yeah, so my team was all data gathering and analysis. So a separate team was doing all the engagement, the community work. But we were looking at as a global company is the US is very different from Europe and very different from APAC. And so as, Adobe was making the shift to subscription services, it was analyzing, how to put the right messaging in each region. People in the US cared most about the price, but people in Europe cared most about security and privacy. And so making sure that you're kind of leading with the right features and also just kind of planning for the future with strategy. There's also a really nice competitive element to it, really understanding your share of voice against your competitors. You can actually kind of pinpoint content strategies for competition. Big companies are like well-oiled machines. They have their content strategies, a year in advance. And so you can be like, hey, looks like X company is really going heavy on AI this year. So we'll want to make sure that we have, something to combat what they're kind of putting out there.
So if you were, as a smaller company that might be listening to this, if you're just getting into that social listening thing, do you have any like really step one kind of tips for those people?
Yeah, so it's probably not going to matter as much. I mean, your brand, you're going to listen for when people mention you, and it's going to be a lot of more like customer support interaction or just like, hey, thanks for, calling us out. And those will be really easy to handle. You just put those in Slack and, respond one-to-one. But if you're a small company, I think you can use tools to really hone your content strategy. So if you're going hard after remote, well, so are, 10 million other companies. So what is a niche within remote that you can like hone in on that fits with your audience? So you can kind of like find little niche-y areas like cloud computing was really heavy and is still heavy in conversations, but like quantum computing was kind of a niche area that not a lot of people were talking about. And so that was a place that at Adobe, we could kind of put some content out and start to build a little bit of a brand and kind of, scrape into the other stuff. So look for, those large areas and find kind of the more niche places where you can compete.
Okay, cool. So then let's pivot to CloudApp. Now, I installed CloudApp actually as I was preparing for this, and our team is going through a redesign of the app right now. So I've been taking screenshots and GIFs and videos and sending them to the product team. But for anyone that hasn't heard of it, can you tell them just what CloudApp is and
Sure.
what led you there?
Yeah, so CloudApp, I was 7 years into my Adobe journey, like I said, and I'd kind of had a buddy introduce me to CloudApp, and they had just raised money from Adobe, from our Adobe's VC arm, and they had just announced an Adobe XD integration and were presenting at Max. So I did some consulting with them, and I was like, hey, this is actually really cool. At the time, I was managing some resources in India and some other regions, and synchronous communication was really hard, like doing a Blue Jeans call, which is what Adobe used. Nobody wants to be on the call when you're talking to India, because it's like I was at 7 a.m., they were at 7 p.m., or they were at 7 p.m. and I was at 7 a.m. So no one's really happy. So we started using CloudApp to really communicate more asynchronously. So you mentioned a lot of the screenshot stuff. There's also a video tool, so you can record yourself talking to a screen or a presentation, and it was really great for project management. And so consulting turned into interviewing, and I was like, hey, you guys don't have a head of marketing. I think I could be great for that role, and kind of presented a plan, and I've just been implementing it ever since. And so at its core, CloudApp is a visual communication tool to kind of answer your first question. It allows you to create instantly shareable videos, GIFs, and screenshots. And the screenshots are also, you can annotate on them. So you were mentioning design work. That's something at Adobe, I'd do these massively long PDFs that just had like comments and stuff everywhere. And Google Docs get really messy sometimes as well. Sometimes you just need a simple screenshot with an arrow and some text to say, hey, put this hero image here and make it, this type of hero instead.
Yeah. Well, it's super useful, even from the short amount of time I've been using it. So thanks for that. I know you've been putting out a lot of remote content because we're in, this world where people are working a lot more remotely now. So I'm curious, you must be seeing a total boom in traffic of people just needing a tool like yours. Is that the case?
Yeah. There's been some really interesting data. We've actually put out some data from CloudApp that was featured in a few places. And the biggest interest for me is just the work shifts. So we saw, and I haven't refreshed this for 3 or 4 weeks, so it's probably grown, but there's been a 3 to 3x increase in usage during the morning commute time. So what would normally be driving into the office time. And then also 3x increase during after hours. So between like 6 and 12. So that kind of tells me that, I'm I'm kind of applying my own life. I have 3 kids. They're all under the age of 7. They're a lot of work. 2 of them are in school. And so I'm working like 8 to 9, and then I'm like helping with school. And then I'm like working a little bit more. And then I hear like a massive, fight going on. And then my wife has some work to do. And so we're like, trying to balance stuff. And I'm definitely working more at night than I used to. So that's been really interesting. And then you mentioned the remote content. We're like a remote first product, right? A lot of people use us for that kind of reason. And so we put out a lot of remote content over the years since I've started. And between like March 11th was kind of the day that COVID got a face with Tom Hanks and Rudy Gobert, and the NBA shut down and all of that stuff. And that night I like text my team and I was like, hey, here's the plan. We need to put out, more remote. We're tripling down on remote. I made some assignments, and those pieces of content paired with the ones we did in Q3 and Q4, like 10x'd in traffic. One in particular, like one blog post was like almost 20x, and it's on a pretty large number. So it wasn't like, 1 to 20, but like thousands to more thousands. And then, definitely signups and usage have been pretty crazy. So it's been, a wild ride. And hopefully, it's been a helpful tool as people are kind of like trying to figure out what to do.
Well, it's exciting. I know my productivity has definitely spiked during nap time and during, I've got 2 kids. So certain times of the day it's gone down and certain times it goes way up. So do you think this is going to be a long-term impact? I know at the beginning it was, like a month, a couple months, and then we're going to go back to normal. It seems like the sentiment's kind of changed on that. So are you guys preparing for like a long-term shift in how people might use your tool or stay remote?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing. So I had Daniel DeBow from he's VP at Shopify on my podcast the other day, and he said something that was really interesting that I kind of thought about, but I'll give him the credit since he said it. He said that 7 years of digital transformation talk has been crammed into 7 weeks, and that's couldn't be more true. I think what we'll see is that companies are being forced to develop digital or remote playbooks, and they're being forced to create the infrastructure and the support to be productive and kind of create this new normal, which doesn't really necessarily have an end. We don't know when it will necessarily end or if it will come back and that type of thing. So businesses have to be prepared for that. So, Twitter came out and said that they're supporting working from home. I'm sure that's really for existing employees if you kind of read between the lines. Where I think the real shifts in remote work happen is when the big companies like the Googles, the Twitters, the Facebooks are willing to hire remote first, but also senior leadership. Like if you have a C-level or an EVP or someone that is really senior at one of those big tech companies that is not in HQ and is hired and is not like, hey, thanks for joining the company. Also, you're moving to California. I hope you know that. I think that'll be the big thing to drop is when senior leadership is more distributed.
So I'll share a personal example. Some people know this because we've posted on our blog, but we've hired in the last 2 months since we've been remote, 12 people. And one of them was a VP of customer experience. So a member of the leadership team, and customer experience is so crucial to what we're doing. And I've never met this guy. Like it was a total remote interview process. And I think it's just an example of how the world is changing, that his direct reports haven't met him, and the people he reports to haven't met him, but yet he's just crushing it. He's doing well. So I think companies have to make that shift. And like you said, and like your friend at Shopify said, it's just a condensed timeline. You're having to make quick decisions. So I know you've got a podcast, DNA of an Experience, and I say in a lot of my presentations that bad processes are bad experiences. Bad experiences are broken processes. So when you want to fix a customer experience, there's really a process that's broken. So your podcast must be full of process.
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of piggybacked off of my experience with Adobe. Adobe kind of went all in on this customer experience narrative like 4 years ago. Shifted all the product names, shifted all the company focus. So I learned a lot, about how Adobe itself did it, but also they did a lot of like highlights, which was really cool to see how, T-Mobile and Virgin and REI and like all these diverse brands focused on their customer experience. So yeah, on that podcast, it's really a lot about understanding the root of an experience. And I think you brought up a little piece of it. It's really just understanding the customer and getting as much feedback as you can. I think one of the nice things, maybe the not so nice things about joining a startup is that I'm right at the heart of everything. So at a big company like Adobe, I'm kind of like on the outskirts with my little team, and I like see what other people are talking about, but I'm not like directly in front of the customer, and I'm not in those meetings kind of talking about how we use customer feedback and that type of thing. But at CloudApp, we are constantly doing user interviews, both from the product and also the marketing site. And it's a lot of times it's literally people off the street, like a cold email or a cold, connection. Hey, we'll give you a Amazon gift card if you'll, take 20 minutes to go through.
Not even customers, just random people.
Sometimes it's not always customers. Yeah. Like, hey, what do you think we do? Here's our homepage. Here's our H1, our hero. What do you think we do? And then we have them sign up for the product. How is the onboarding? Do you know what you're supposed to do next? Do you feel like you know how to create a screenshot? Can you see immediate value from this type of thing? So there's that like element of just people off the street, but then there's also the element of customers and having quarterly board reviews and customer advisory boards and really understanding, what people are using it for and how we can make it better.
Yeah, so I guess experience starts with listening. Is that what you're saying? It's kind of getting perspective and feedback. I remember at my the college I went to, they had this marketing research lab with those one-way mirror or two-way mirror sort of things.
Right.
And yeah. I always wanted to do a focus group in that like traditional sense, but now it's so easy to just get people online and run an ad and give away gift cards, and so everybody should be doing this and collecting that kind of feedback. I know, so when it comes to designing experiences and trying to collect feedback and then design a process, how much can you stray from the process to improve the experience? Like is the best experience a concrete process, or is it a fluid process?
No, I think that's a really good question. I think it's fluid. If I think back, first of all, you brought up a great point. The experiences are designed, right? Like that's maybe something I didn't learn until I took I went to Stanford when I was at Adobe, just, kind of like a executive type degree. And I took design thinking, and until then I didn't necessarily recognize that experiences were designed like from start to finish. So I think that's kind of the first part, is recognizing how much effort it can take. The other part is people want to be treated. It's kind of like, I can't remember. I feel like this is like a John Maxwell type quote, but it's like the platinum rule, which is treat people the way they want to be treated versus like treat people how you want to be treated. So you need to create experiences based on the person or the persona. Obviously, you want it to feel one-to-one, but you've got to design it one-to-many, which is the challenging part. But also, like I mentioned, customer feedback. We're making changes and updates based on a majority, But there's also a lot of people that anytime we make an update, they're like, hey, what happened to, that one random tool where I was the only person using it and now it's gone? And they're, posting on Reddit or Twitter or whatever and complaining about it. So you've got to kind of take the good with the bad and understand that when you do develop an experience or lead with customer feedback, that you're probably going to make some people unhappy as well.
Yeah, I think a good way to think about it, like when I was consulting before Trainual, I would collect tons of feedback from a company, and then I'd look for the lowest common denominators, like the stuff everyone was saying. And then you design for kind of the lowest common denominator. And now as a process company, even with Trainual, we tell people just make your processes simple. Like they shouldn't be so prescriptive that you're micromanaging every step along the way. It's like you have a simple process and then you can stray from it if needed to make an individual experience really good for a customer. Like I know Ritz-Carlton gives every employee like $2,000 that they can use to correct something for a customer. I'm sure you've heard that, but that's like such a cool example of like they've got their processes of how they do things, but everyone's empowered to improve a process or improve an experience.
Yeah, and you mentioned like a best in class experience, right? I can by no means afford to stay at a Ritz-Carlton, but like had the opportunity to stay at like a Montage, I think, which is kind of on the same level, or the Waldorf, and for like a conference or something. And they they have like the earpieces and they're like saying, Mr. Martin is checking in. And you're like walking
right.
in the door. The front desk is like, hi, Mr. Martin, thanks for joining us. We have your room for you. And then they send you like a thank you card at the end. There's just like this crazy string with like that level of experience that
it's so wild.
Is pretty cool to like see. And then you have to like, how do I create that on a digital level when I'm not getting that face-to-face, that like interpersonal connection that you might get from like a retail or a travel industry?
So what you're suggesting then is it's good R&D for someone listening to go stay at one of those hotels. It's an expense, company expense.
Definitely.
Go design
sure you can get it real
process.
cheap right now.
Cool. All right. So let's go back to I want to round out with this feedback thing, because I think we both agree feedback and listening and collecting these perspectives are super important. So how do you tactically do this? Like, how do you ask your customers to provide feedback? How often do you do it? What's the frequency that goes into designing a good experience?
So I think there's trust that you build, and you have to have tough skin and be vulnerable if you're asking for that feedback. And it starts with, you did the interview, you took the feedback, and then the next step is you actually implemented it. And when you implemented it, you reached out to the customer and said, hey, loved your feedback in Q3 of 2019. Wanted to let you know that we actually just pushed that feature live in 2020, Q2 of 2020. Let us know what you think. So you're actually like building this trust with, you probably start out with your larger customers, and try and create that one-to-one relationship with them. And then they see that you not only took the feedback, you took it well. Customer advisory boards are not super fun. I haven't been to any at CloudApp, but Adobe, they're always, pretty straightforward and rough when you're like the product lead and you're, getting torn up. But you took that, feedback, you're vulnerable, you put it into your roadmap, you made it happen. And then they're like, okay, wow, this is actual customer feedback led company. I want to give some more because you gave them that gratification. So I think that's kind of the loop that you need to follow.
Yeah, I love that. What you said is the closing the loop builds the trust. And you go over and over again. It's a cycle of being vulnerable, ask for the feedback, implement the feedback, tell them what you did, and then you can get more because you've built trust. So I love that. Great suggestion.
Exactly.
All right. So as we round this out, we like to end with what we call a double tap. So just 5 questions. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind. First, what's a brand you think has perfected its process?
Adobe.
Throwback. Who is someone you've coached or that's coached or mentored you?
So many people. I'll say one, but really, like, for me, people are so willing to help. You have to be willing to ask. Is kind of my thought there. Always be willing to ask, and people are always going to be willing to help. But Tamara Gaffney was my kind of first manager at Adobe. The guy who hired me, love him as well. He left like 6 months after I started. So she was, kind of my first true manager for like 6 years. And she was awesome. And she left Adobe a couple years ago, but is consulting now. So
nice. Okay. How about your favorite book or podcast other than yours or mine?
Awesome. Definitely yours and mine. I think, I got to go with the classic, which is not business related, Count of Monte Cristo. It has to be my favorite book. I remember the first time I read it, like in junior high, I was just like glued to it and couldn't put it down. Podcast, I've kind of been off the podcast wagon, except for, like yours and like a few handful of other people's recently. But I loved Planet Money for a long time. I like the quick little briefs of conversations and research.
All right, two more. Most entertaining person you follow online.
There's two guys that I met through Adobe, Jeff Barrett and David Rhodes. Barrett All and Rhodes 411, and they're pretty hilarious. They're always coming up with funny things. So I like following them.
I love when someone's answer to that is not someone famous. It's just like, my neighbor is hilarious. And this is the dude. And what's one app you can't live without?
Naturally CloudApp, of course. But recently also so we just set up over the last couple of weeks this TRX system in our house. And I hadn't gone to the gym for, like 2 months. And I was just dying, like eating all these carbs and just feeling terrible about myself. So we set up the TRX system, and I've been using their app, and their app is really clean and it leads you through some workouts. And it's a great home gym when you don't have the space for a home gym.
They are targeting me like crazy on Instagram, so I'll probably end up with one of those too.
Yeah, my wife did a certification last year with them, so we got like the suspension system as a part of that, and so we just recently installed it, and it's been great.
Cool. All right. Well, then I guess to summarize, obviously, everybody that's listening, check out CloudApp. It's a really cool tool. It has a free plan to start off with screenshots and GIFs and videos and ways to communicate with your team, especially while you're remote. It looks like we're going to be in a remote future, so I would suggest everybody listening tool up for that. And then don't forget to interact with your customers and people off the street that are not your customers to get feedback about their perception of your brand and what you do so that you can fine tune your customer experience. Joe, thanks so much for being here and taking the time.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, Chris. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for listening to Process Makes Perfect. If you're watching on YouTube, we do have an audio version available everywhere you listen to your podcast, so be sure to check that out. If you liked what you heard, please leave a review and be sure to subscribe to the channel here. And we'd love if you would tell a few friends or family or anyone you think that could benefit from this. You can find me on social media anywhere at Chris Ronzio, or the company Trainual, that's Train UAL, like a training manual, at Trainual, anywhere you want to follow us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.